When you're first learning Latin, you come across sentences like this. Servus dominam salūtat. This means the slave greets his mistress. Let's match up the words. Servus means slave, but greets is salūtat and mistress is dominam. Wait a second, what's going on here? Why are these words all jumbled up in a weird order? This video will discuss the basics of Latin word order, and I really mean the basics. So let's talk about English first. Here's a basic sentence. The cat sits in the chair. Here we have the subject, the cat, coming first in the sentence, followed immediately, and I'm stressing that immediately, since in English the doer of the action comes right before the action, followed immediately by the verb, sits. Then finally we have a prepositional phrase, in the chair, showing where the cat sits. If we rearrange the order of these words, it should still make sense, simply because we have one of every part of speech, one noun, one verb, and one prepositional phrase. The cat in the chair sits the cat. We can even do sits in the chair the cat. Don't get me wrong, that's not the best English sentence, but your brain at least can decode what's going on in that sentence. In all of these, we have a cat, and it's doing some sitting in some sort of chair. But let's complicate it a bit and have two nouns, one that's doing the action and the other receiving the action. As you know, the doer is the subject and the receiver is the direct object. The dog chases the cat. And here, word order is very important. As before, the subject, the doer, has to come immediately before the verb, the action. The dog chases. That's our primary action. And it's typical in English for the direct object, the cat, to come after the verb. And what if we rearrange the order, though, and switch up cat and dog? Now, since the cat is right before the verb, it's doing the chasing, and the dog, coming after the verb, is the direct object, being chased. In English, word order tells us many things and is very important. In fact, we use the order of the words in a sentence to tell us things that Latin tells us simply by the ending of a noun. Typically, subjects in English come before verbs, and direct objects come after. So in Latin, we know that the ending of the word changes based on its grammar. So the word servus, slave, ends in a us when it's doing the action and in a um when it's receiving the action. This is the nominative case, and this one is the accusative case. So going back to our original sentence, servus dominam salūtat, the slave greets the mistress. The us ending on servus tells us that it's doing the action, while the am ending on dominam tells us that it's receiving the action. And if we move these words around in the sentence, guess what? The ending stays the same, and the same bit of information is still there. Servus still ends in us, no matter where it is in the sentence, it's still doing the action. It's still the subject. Dominam, likewise, still ends in an am, no matter where it is, and it's still the object. With 3 words, there are 6 different possible orders. But guess what? All of these say more or less the same thing. The slave is greeting the mistress. And this is great flexibility. You can construct your Latin sentence with whatever order you want, and you usually emphasize the first word of the sentence. So if you really want to point out the slave, then put servus first. If the mistress, then put dominam. Kind of like it's the mistress the slave is greeting. But in all of this flexibility is a bit of chaos, and the Romans did love order, and so they did have a certain type of standard word order. In your basic, straightforward narrative sentence, you'll likely find this. The subject, the nominative, the doer of the action, comes first, and the verb comes last. Everything else, like the direct object or a prepositional phrase, comes in the middle. There are exceptions to this standard order, so a sentence like Brutus est amicus is typical, where the linking verb est comes between the 2 nouns, joining them together. But you could also see this sentence with a different order. Brutus amicus est. And it says the same thing. One more thing. Why this order with the verb at the end? Well, there are actually quite a few languages that have the order subject-object-verb. English has the subject-verb-object standard order, and in fact about 45% of all languages in the world share Latin's SOV, that's subject-object-verb, order, while English's SVO, subject-verb-object, order is found in, a little bit less, about 42%. And other variations make up the rest. So Latin isn't alone, and I know that the Romans felt that a sentence with the main action occurring at the end of the phrase has a sort of suspense when you're reading or speaking. It's like this. Brutus. We know that Brutus is doing something. What's he doing? I don't know. In tablino. Oh, now we know where he is. He's in the study. Amicum. Now we know to whom he's doing something. Salūtat. Oh, he's greeting him. Wait, no. Verberat. Oh, he's beating him up. It's like a roller coaster with all the ups and downs in expectation. Or Latin is like a great mystery novel where you don't quite know who done it or what's being done actually until the end. You might know who did it and to whom it was done and where it was done before you know what it was that happened. Suspense.